Yes, purpose. I was concerned very early on. I mean, it was a teenager. The sort of Saturday job. First of all, in the bingo places on seaside, seafront, especially during the holiday times. And then I worked, while at college in the same town, Southend-on-Sea. Typical seaside tripper town. People from London would come down for the day. It was the holiday for the poor. It had once been the holiday for the rich, the royals. Great statue of Queen Victoria on the seafront and all that class stuff. But of course the reality was places like permanent fairground called the Cursor, owned by some wealthy family that made money out of the sort of holiday that the poor could tack together. Chips and promenade along the seafront, deck chairs, sunshine, cliff gardens, Never Neverland for the kids, which were lit up fairyland little park, well, quite a big park on the cliffs at night. And in the fairground where I then worked instead, holiday jobs and so on. It's a time of full employment, and the rotten jobs, the marginal jobs in society were available for the desperate class, the poor, suffering from alcohol and loneliness and bad decisions and no hope. No religion either. Just distress. I was concerned for the poor. I was not of them, but I wanted to rescue them with all my heart. Not rejecting like my class, my Victorian roots, but longing to help them, to rescue them. It's what attracted me, of course, to humanism, and what little I knew of communism I thought had to be good. I was right, of course, but like religion, it just gets corrupted, doesn't it? Gets a bad name. And the world's very happy, especially the successful part of the world, to give it a bad name. And a lot of truth in the criticism, of course. But of course, the ones criticizing are the very engine that's demanding its existence. My soul longs for thee, my poor and destitute cry out for thee. And religion, well, the religion I saw was almost non-existent. But then I came from a secular background, you see. And when I did find religion in my 20s, if you like, it confirmed what I thought, that it's just part of the tyranny of the poor. I was not impressed. And of course, as the great thinker, the great philosopher, and with the arrogance of Victorian England, I knew I was right. This confidence, which came really of Mum's love for me, incredibly close relationship. I had an arrogance, that confidence that found public speaking a breeze and acting no nervousness at all. I was at my element, in my element rather, being strong in discourse, indomitable, very strong arguer. A person that in a sense the teacher had to reckon with, more than your equal. Surprisingly able. And yet surprisingly not able in mechanics of things like English, spelling, writing, gift of words, but not at that point a gift of writing at all. A logic that appreciated maths, algebra, geometry, technical drawing, tough school, secondary school, a lot of bullying and a lot of fear. A lot of the kids in fear of other kids. And of staff in those days. Fear of teachers. Yeah. Fear of dad. Love of mum that gave one all the resources to handle, cope with the problems of childhood. Loving mum is absolutely everything, you know. At university I was too capable. The less able staff found me to be an enemy. I'm afraid I showed them up to be what they were. I suppose I didn't have compassion for incompetence at that level of status. You know, university lecturers and so on, professors. I could make mincemeat of them in a lecture. I must have been hated, really, by some. But of course others I was devoted to. And I guess that counted for my survival. But I longed for something greater than academia. my eyes were on rescuing a world of poverty and suffering and despair. I knew that religion wasn't doing it, and nor was capitalism. Both seem to have been causal in its existence, rather than the solution. It seemed to be the cause, the chains. I realized early on that it was not an economic problem or a political problem or a social problem. It was possibly some sort of psychological type of problem, which got me close to a spiritual. Mum had much interest in wonder workers from India and Tibet and so on. And wondered if, well, I don't know. I don't think I really hoped that there would be an answer in the spiritual. I didn't know what the answer was. I just knew that if anyone was going to find it, it was going to be me. The arrogance, the ego of the man. It's because of a loving mum gives you such confidence, such assurance, you see. Precocious, you could say. Made decisions that others would not make. Well, there came a turning point when I ran out of money. I had slackened off from pushing for a first as regards one's degree to realizing all I needed was a 2-1, and I got a mediocre 2-1 instead of a good one. Well, fairly good. But not enough to get me a grant to do the masters. So I borrowed the money and was amazed that it was available in the bank. And then ran out of money. Of course, my expenditure was a bit greater than my income. Reached a crisis with the not at all able professor that I was research assistant to, earning a little bit of extra money, in fact very good money. He was paying double what the hourly rate was in the UK at the time to me. But I'm afraid I held him in contempt. The poor chap was not as able as he was wanting to pompously make out, you know. And but I didn't have a sympathy for him, I'm afraid. I could love the poor, but I couldn't love the rich that seemed to be parasites to me. It was my view, you see. Not a very noble view, was it? I decided to stop. I wasn't going to get further into debt. And I decided I wanted a job that would just help people locally, not on some grandiose scale of being a world banker, an economist, but just to help those that were really in need at the coalface, if you like, where the problems really were that I was wanting to reach out to. So I thought I'd become a trainee social worker. And while I was waiting a couple of months for the job, which had been promised to me, I was just free of time, overwhelming ability and freedom of time. It was a recipe for a miracle to come into my life. This guy who I scarcely knew on the master's course gave me a book. He said, I think he said it was given to him and not really of interest, but would be of interest to me, he thought. I looked at the cover and thought, what an amazing looking bloke on the cover. Paramahansa Yogananda, autobiography of a yogi. And that changed my life. I was fascinated by its Indian content, because of Mum, of course. And I don't mean Mum was from India, of course. She was from poor class, English. Cove, Farnborough, Hampshire, England. Council house. Dad, of course, was wealthy. We're reading the book with plenty of time and a beautiful environment, of course. My campus, Essex. Gardeners, who of course I knew. I talked to gardeners, I talked to maintenance people. I made friends always with the cleaners in the towers where we lived, and the staff in the cafes and the library. I talked as much to all these as ever I did to the academics. You see, I was already a master of logic and reasoning. I already had enough to give in my heart and my mind to those who were in need. They were the ones I wanted to reach out to. I'd leave some chocolates for my cleaner. And I'd talk endlessly to the reception staff at the library. Lady and chaps who did the coats, looked after the coats and bags. All staff. Lower staff, the staff that were coping always with being inferior to the academics. I was not superior to the inferior, ever. I wanted with all my heart to reach out to them. I knew my calling. I didn't know where I was to go or what the leading was to, but I knew my calling. It was in me from Mum's love and concern for the poor. This is what I was called to do, but I don't know how. And the sheer numbers of those in need, just bewildering. How could I ever rescue so many? I realized when reading the book, I wanted God to exist. My God, of course. God who cared about poor people. And increasingly a God who cared about life, of course. I'd stopped fishing as a young teenager because I was worried that it would hurt the fish. I was told they were cold-blooded, they can't feel, you know. It's like the poor. The poor are not like us, you know. That was my father's mother, my grandmother on that side, her view. The poor don't feel like us, dear, said to my mum. Not the person to tell that to. She had been from poor class. Oh, Mum was fuming, of course. And Mum was like fire when she fumed, I can tell you. She would indeed burn all before it. For the female of the species is more deadly than the male. You want to keep her on your side, I can tell you. Being her boy, of course, her only son, well, I was on her side always. Thank you, Heavenly Dad. And so the book transformed me. I realized I wanted God to exist. Something amazing had happened to Marshall. my God had the answer. Of course he would have, wouldn't he? So my arrogance came to my rescue, and my brilliance suddenly found a home, a perfect, able, understanding God. Personified the reliance of Dad, the affluence, of course, the ability, but the compassion and the love of Mum. I'd come home. I knew who my God was. And you need to do the same. It's your God, not anyone else's, not Marshall's God, not the world's God, not the church's God, not the Christian God. You need to find your God, the one who loves you and all that you value, who personifies what you value, and you're going to trust him with all your heart to lead you to a better understanding of him. Correct any illusions and misunderstandings you have. You're going to trust his absolute sovereignty of love and care in your life. Bless you. You found your true home and your true destiny. You were always in it, just that you didn't know. Now you do. Thank you, Heavenly